were originally in San Francisco, both Brett and I, and we had this crazy idea of doing this. And we've gone to Pittsburgh, and we've gone to Miami, and now Atlanta. So this is great. I don't know the Wi-Fi password. We can find that out if you need it. We are recording all of these sessions. Why are we doing that? Because we have over 100 hours of all these presentations from San Francisco, Pittsburgh, and Miami, and now Atlanta that you guys can just access for free. So you'll all get a little code, and it'll allow you to access it for about a year. So, if you have questions, if you have all that stuff, we put the presentations on there as well. So my name is Troy Kirby. This is Brett Zalaski. And, essentially we're just going to go through the day and really always hit it hard, because my biggest issue with sales training has been that a lot of times they either talk to people that are just getting into the industry or haven't, or they're talking to people who are C-level, and they never really talk to you guys who are actually living it every day. So I want to make sure it's relevant and everything else. If you have comments, I do read them. I want to know exactly what it is that you guys feel you need to learn about. So other than that, thank you very much, and here's Brett Zalaski.
Good morning, everyone. So this is my 4th consecutive year going at 7:30 in the morning, and I keep walking into the room just assuming that nobody's going to be here and nobody's going to show up, and I've been wrong for 4 consecutive years. I know Troy just started talking about that story about us talking about this and doing this. First of all, give Troy a round of applause, because he's the one that actually picked up that conversation and did it and put together a day like this for everyone. So very quickly, I'm not going to go through all of this stuff, but that's my background. That's who I am. I've worked for a number of 2 different league offices. I worked for a company that wrote the Challenger sale. I'm very proud of my background, very proud of what I've been able to accomplish. But a lot of when I'm looking at sales training in sports, I'm looking at it from a very big perspective. Not one sport, one industry. It's taking a look at it as a global level. And for the last 3 years, I've tried to walk in here and talk about, here are the things and the trends that I'm seeing when it comes to sales training. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach this year. I'm going to take a look at what are we doing when it comes to sales training as an industry, and try to think about how do we make sure that we do sales training a little bit better in 2018. And sales training isn't just how our managers are teaching us. Sales training comes down to how we're taking in information too. Are we going out and trying to make ourselves, if we're reps, better salespeople? And one of the stories I like to tell is, how many people have read this book? Awesome. I don't think anybody's ever read this book, except for me. Book by a guy named Jonathan Abrams. It's a basketball book called Boys Among Men. In this book, what Jonathan Abrams wanted to try to figure out was, for all the prep to pro superstars, what was the difference between the people who made it and the people who didn't make it? So for every person that you see on the cover of this book, there's a Strawmile Swift or a Jonathan Swift who didn't make it, right? A prep school basketball player who just didn't make it when they made that transition to the pro level. So he isolated 3 things that were the biggest difference between people who didn't make it and people who did make it. The number 3 thing was talent. The least most important of all the most important things was talent. Here comes the 2 points that I want to make sure that we think about when we talk about sales training and we talk about our industry and elevating the level of conversation when it comes to sales. The second most important was the internal infrastructure that we put together. Meaning, when these players came out and went to the pros, did their organizations treat them like a college graduate, which they weren't? They were an 18-year-old kid, right? Or did they treat them like, this is someone that doesn't have life experience? We need to coddle them, embrace them, and make sure that as an organization, we're really providing for these people and helping them mature into not just basketball players, but men. I mean, I think most of us here went to college, right? What was the biggest, most defining year of your college career? For me, it was my freshman year, right? That's when I learned to live on my own, show up to class on time without my parents. I played baseball, getting to baseball practice, doing all those things. Easily, for me, the most important year. A lot of these guys never had that year, right? So did those organizations do that? There's guys like Rashard Lewis in that book that said, if it wasn't for the internal infrastructure of the Supersonics when I got there treating me like an 18-year-old kid, I never would have made it. Think internally, if you're a manager or director, what are we doing to make sure that when we get these kids who a lot of time have no sales experience coming onto our sales floor selling for the first time, How are we making sure that we're educating them not just on basketball, but we're taking on the responsibility to educate them about sales too? Organizationally, we need to come 50% of the way. Now, what do you think was the number one biggest differentiator that Jonathan Abrams found in the book? What's that? Close? Close? Right page. It's drive or motivation. How driven and how motivated were these people? And a lot of times when we get into sports and we get that first sports job, what's one of the things we say? Oh, I made it. I got that job. I represent that badge. I represent that logo. How cool is that? And we take our foot off the gas pedal. Right? How many people here took a class in college that they'll never use in the real world? I took Intro to Existentialism, right? Like, when am I ever going to use that in the real world? But you read the books, right? You studied, right? To get that passing grade so you could get the job. This is the job. Now you need to step up how you study and how you prepare and how you push yourself. These guys, when they made it, weren't like, oh yes, I made it. My life's dream, I accomplished it, I got to the pros. It's like, nah, I got it, now I gotta make all rookie. Now I gotta make an all-star game. Now I gotta make all NBA. Now I gotta be an MVP. Now I gotta win a championship. They put goals, they were driven to those goals every single day, and they battled for those things every single day. How many LeBron fans in here? LeBron didn't have a jump shot until about 4 years ago, right? But he knew that as the game was developing, that's what he needed to do. Now he's a great shooter. Even when he reached the pinnacle, when he was an MVP and a champion, he still found a way to push himself to continue to grow as a player and as an athlete. And I love this. I ran across this slide. Someone sent it to me because they knew that I think that this is funny. If you can't read it, it says, didn't we train all our salespeople and they did well in the assessments? Yes, each salesperson had 100 hours of training and scored more than 80%. That's obviously not enough. You can see the sales in the background going down. That's obviously not enough. We need more, 200 hours, 100%. And we think about training. We think about doing a lot of training, or we don't do enough training, and we think about the volume of the training. And so I put together a Venn diagram that I think shows the perfect amount of training overall. We're doing it wrong. When we think about sales training and how we need to educate not just our reps, but ourselves in 2018, we need to rethink what is the information that we are passing to our sales reps, and as sales reps, what's the information that we are taking in, and how is it going to make us a better salesperson moving forward? And so in 2018, I've lucky. So my background before sports was outside of sports. So I've been able to go back and have a lot of conversations. So before I started this new business venture that I'm doing, I spent about 6 weeks going out and talking to everybody that I could possibly talk to that I knew outside of sports to say, what are you doing from a sales training standpoint? How are you spending and how are you investing your time from a sales training perspective? Internally, externally, hiring, whatever. And these were the things that came up all the time. Product knowledge, product differentiation, improv comedy, public speaking training, entrepreneurialism, pipeline management and self-prospecting, engagement or channel stacking, and traditional sales training. So I'm going to talk about each one of these and go through them as quick as I can to make sure I stay on the half hour before the floor opens up and I get sucked out. So I want to talk about the first one, product knowledge, product differentiation. I had a conversation with one of my friends that leads all US sales for Living Social. Who here knows who Living Social is? Everybody here knows what Living Social is, right? So I was having a conversation with her, and in that conversation I said, what are you doing from a sales training standpoint? What's the most important thing that you're focused on from a sales training standpoint? And she said, we are getting rid of almost all traditional sales training. Almost all traditional sales training. And our number one focus when it comes to training is product knowledge. That's where we are investing the massive amount of resources that we have. They have resources. They're Living Social. We are investing in that. Why? Why do you think they're investing so much of their time, money, and effort into product knowledge training? Yes, in the back. Absolutely, they want to be experts in their own field. Why is that so important in 2018? Why is that such a massive shift in 2018? Yes, in the back. Yeah, there's a study that's been done that says buyers have about 60% of the information before they engage with a salesperson in 2018. That isn't always true on the sports business side, but there is a lot of information that's being done well ahead of you having a conversation with that person. And so when we think about our jobs in 2018, we can either just be the internet and relay information back to people, or we can look at ourselves as, how does our process differentiate us from the internet? Because one of the things that you have to remember, and I talked a little bit about this last year, is you need to be a better sales process than the internet, because the internet is easier at sales than you. Yes, I know people are paying more money, but the internet is better and more efficient at sales than you, unless you care enough to elevate the content that you learn about your team, your organization, your ticket products beyond what the internet has to offer. Because a lot of times, here's what a sales conversation sounds like. What's your name? You can be the buyer, right? This is what the sales conversation sounds like. Who'd you go with? How was the experience? Where'd you sit? All right, well, we have all these ticket packages available. I mean, I hope you want to buy something, right? The average sales call has about 4.6 sales questions in it. And a lot of our conversations sound like that, right? That's really boring. Knowing your product allows you to have the freedom to not just repeat the stuff that you have on the internet or that your boss told you. It allows you to think about your ticket packages and everything that you do a little bit differently. So here are the things that you need to know. You need to know about your team. Every badge that you represent, you need to know every single player. You need to have an opinion about who's your favorite player, who's not. You need to know these people. What's their background? Where did they come from? What the stories of these players? It's not just up to your marketing team to tell these stories and do these things. It's up to you as a salesperson to be able to engage the other person on the other end of the phone. That's your responsibility. Next, you need to understand your sport. You need to understand where it fits in a global standpoint. Sold a lot of soccer in my career. If you asked me a soccer question before 2009, I have no idea. The sport may as well not have existed before 2009. But from 2010 on, I can have a conversation with anyone. Because that's what I sold. That was my responsibility. If I ended up talking to a soccer head, I needed to be able to have that conversation. I needed to be able to sit in there with them. There's this line that you hear in sports, know enough to be dangerous. That's crap. That's a sellout. You need to know everything about your team and your sport because that's your job. We're not taking existentialism in college to get a good grade. We're here to do work. We're here to give ourselves confidence. And some of the ones that you may not think about that are really important and really critical. Your stadium. You need to know your stadium and your arena like the back of your hand. One of my favorite sales that I've ever seen was there was a night when I was working for the Columbus Crew that we sold out all of our group areas. And one of my sales reps said, I got a group of 150 that wants to do a presentation. We were like, we can't do it. And she's like, I found a spot. The back of the stage. We sold literally the guts of the stadium behind the back of the stage for a 150-person group. But that came with her. She knew the arena. She knew the area. She knew what was available. She knew what those opportunities were. And she was able to create group ideas and group concepts out of nothing. Out of complete thin air. It was one of the most incredible group sales that I've ever seen from that point. You need to know that. You need to know your product mix. If someone says, I'm looking at 4 season tickets in the lower sideline, you need to be able to say, well, that's $1,234. You can't get on a calculator and be working this out with them. You need to know that stuff. That's your job. That's your responsibility. And by the way, managers and directors, you should be doing sales training with this. you should be creating resources like a season ticket or a mini plan chart that shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 purchases. What does that equal out to so our rep can just look at it while they're trying to learn it? Those things are really critical for you to continue to put yourself in that position like we talked about to be an expert. And this one's really important, and I don't think I would have come up with this one on my own. I came up from a lot of conversations, but you need to know your key differentiators. So whether it's your sport or your team, you live in a very crowded marketplace. And a lot of times when people are making a decision, if it's here in Atlanta, right, they're deciding between the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta Hawks and the Atlanta Dream and all the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta United, or Atlanta FC, and then the water parks, the zoos, the aquariums. It's a huge, congested marketplace. So when you're in a conversation with someone, you can't assume that your badge is just going to sell. You need to know those key points of differentiation that make your stadium, your experience better than what you're talking to. Another word for this is, what are your competitive advantages? Right? You need to understand what those things are and be able to have them and bring them up in a conversation while you're doing that. And this takes sales training. There should be probably about 12 to 18 of these competitive advantages that your organization has that you could employ at any time. One of my favorite ones was when we were selling B2B in soccer, one of the biggest objections we get is soccer. Nobody's bought soccer before, so soccer's risky on the B2B side. What a lot of people don't know is that soccer, on average, has the second highest attendance in professional sports. That was a key point of differentiation when we were having that conversation. Now, I mean, that's per game, so there's tons of ways that you can slice that information. But that was a huge point of differentiation when we were talking to someone on the B2B side to get them to understand the legitimacy of soccer and what we were trying to sell. So you've got to understand these things and these points of differentiation. And you need to know sales. And like, here's a plug, right, for my website and my new company. You need to know sales. When I was growing up, I didn't know about LinkedIn. I didn't know about blogs. No one told me about sales books. The way that I studied sales was by finding really awesome salespeople at the corporate executive board and listened to them. And sat down with them and asked them questions, heard about them, listened to them, and did it. But this is your job. You need to educate yourself about sales. If you're looking for a good sales book, I could tell you a million of them. I just read on the way here To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink for the second time. Like a good sales book, I'm the one that's taking in that information, reading that information, and really downloading that information to make sure that not just what I'm talking about is the most current information about sales, but I'm studying sales too, because part of my job is selling, right, still. I've got to sell myself to teams and clubs for long-term training things. And so I've got to make sure that I'm engaging them, talking them, selling them in a way that's actually going to generate opportunity for me. So the next thing that's really important that we start teaching from a sales standpoint is read and react. That's how a lot of people are talking about it. When I was at the National Sales Center, we worked with a Brave New Workshop, which is an improv comedy troupe. Join a local improv comedy troupe. There's plenty of stuff that you can look at online to be able to see and look at improvisational comedy. Why do you think this is one of those areas when I talk to sales staffs outside of sports, they're investing lots of money in improv training or literally having their reps go to improv, especially when they're bringing a rep into an organization? Why do you think it's so important? Ronald? That's right. What else? Yep, absolutely. What else? Yeah. Sorry, I'll try to make mine more Siri related going forward. Yeah, so improvisational comedy is one of the most important things that I did to help rejuvenate my sales career. So it wasn't just that we were teaching this at the sales center, right? I was doing it too. And I had to take part in it, and I did it. And the confidence that you get to be in any situation and to be able to know what to say, know how to react, know how to talk, If anybody's been in one of my sales trainings, you'll know that we do improv comedy within the sales training because it's a really important way to put yourself in a position. You can think about objections all you want, but playing what's in the box or doing objection handling speed dating is the best way to get lots of reps to train yourself to be able to react in that moment and talk in that moment. Because that is a critical part of what our job is. Our job needs to be critical thinking, not critical relaying. Right? Oh, they said something I'm not sure, so here's all the information. I hope you buy something. I hope you do something. And we word vomit or we kitchen sink them. We need to be able to have the confidence in ourselves that we can read and react in that situation. And you need to have an elevator pitch ready. If you're thinking about what's my elevator pitch, you're probably not someone that attends a lot of networking events. You're one of those people that says, oh, I did a couple networking events and it didn't work for me. Your responsibility is to be able to drive sales wherever you are, whatever you're doing. So do you know what your elevator pitch is if you meet a C-level executive when you're on the golf course? Do you have that way to engage them, to connect with them, and to get them to want to connect with you right away? And you need to think about this too. You need to be good at public speaking. You need to have the confidence to be able to do this. One of my favorite, how many people here know the game catchphrase? Awesome sales training device. Your ability to stand in front of a group and try to relay information to get the answers that you're looking for sounds a lot like sales, right? It's an incredible training device. To be able to speak in front of people, talk to people, and try to make sure that what you're saying, because we miss this a lot, and this is why catchphrase is such a good game. The important thing about catchphrase isn't that we can describe the word, right? What's the important thing about the game catchphrase? Sort of, close. Yes? What's that? That you are able to say it in a way that gets them to understand it. Because it doesn't matter how you say it, right? You could keep saying it and saying it and saying it and be like, why isn't that person getting it? And then blame them. Or you could look internally and be able to say, that's my responsibility. I got to find a way to get that person to be able to say that word. Same in sales. And you need to be self-prospecting at all times. Wherever you are, you need to be able to read and react and have that conversation and bring up and drive leads when you're at dinner or when you're on the golf course or when you're standing in line at Subway. Self-prospecting is a key differentiator when it comes to training in 2018 and sales in 2018. Next. So, entrepreneurial training was something that we did a little bit at the Columbus Crew when we wanted to talk about how do reps make sure that they take ownership of their own business and they think about their own business. And whether you like it or not, you're always going to be a franchisee of your professional sports team. It's your business underneath that umbrella. And so when you think about how do you drive success, you should think about how do entrepreneurs drive success, right? I mean, location's important when you open a McDonald's, right? I mean, your location has to be everywhere at all times. Customer service matters at a McDonald's, right? As weird as that sounds. Organization and cleanliness matters when you go to these places. You need to think, research, and act like an entrepreneur at all times when you do this. And you need to make sure that you are spending time on the right things. This one is really critical. So in my website, I take submissions from reps about what information do they want to see me write about when it comes to ticket sales. There's two things. I've got about 150 to 200 submissions so far on my website. There's two things that reps submit with a line underneath them. There's a big drop after the first two. The first is objection handling. Second is time management. I can give you back an hour and a half a day. Qualify your leads appropriately. Make sure you're talking to people that want to have a conversation with you. And that you're breaking up and getting away from people that you're chasing, you're hunting, you're tracking down. Anybody sees my sales training, and there's a couple people here that'll see it this week, you'll see that I spend a lot of time on this. Because time management comes down to how well are we qualifying our leads every single day. Are we putting what's your name? Ryan, are we putting pressure on people appropriately to be able to make a decision? Let's pretend I'm calling to follow up with Ryan. This is what most of us do. So say you hadn't had a chance to talk to your wife yet. Have you had a chance to talk to your wife yet? So when do you think that's going to happen? All right, so I'll call you back later. Right? How many times a day do we do that, right? As opposed to using that as an opportunity to again qualify the lead. So let's try this again. Have you had a chance to talk to your wife yet? Hey Ryan, I got to tell you, in situations like this, when people have bought tickets from me, a lot of times they're sprinting to their wife to have this conversation. And she's your wife, so my guess is that you saw her between the last time that we talked and today. So what's holding you back from having that conversation? When you say good fit, what do you mean? What are you worried about? Time. Now I have an objection, right? Isolating those conversations, getting information out of those things, and never throwing away a phone call. Qualifying that lead to make sure that it's a good lead and a good opportunity in that instance. And never taking a step back off that. Next, pipeline management. The whole document that I teach in my sales trainings. When you think about time, you need to be able to look at your business and say, where do I need to spend time every single day? As opposed to walking into the office and being like, well, guess I'll call some nonprofits today. No, you need to walk in the office and know exactly what you need to do that day for success. If your pipeline's low, you need to make new outbound calls. That's the day where you make 100 calls, 120 calls a day. Your pipeline's flush. You have tons of stuff in your pipeline. You have tons of stuff in your pipeline. That's a day that I need to spend time on my pipeline and close that out. Do you have your document every day that tells you where you need to be versus where you are? And you need to focus and make sure that you're spending the right time in the right place. This is a rep thing and it's a manager thing. Are you spending time on the right leads in the right way at the right time to be able to find consistent sales success? 4, engagement and channel stacking. We need to be training people 2 major things when it comes to engagement. First, attention. Whether it's you sending a tweet, leaving a voice message, emailing someone, or talking to someone, you need to make sure that what you put in there is engaging. If you wouldn't return that voice message, don't send it. If you wouldn't return that email, don't send it. This is Brett from the Atlanta Hawks. Calling because you came to a game. You'd never return that, right? If you wouldn't return it, if you wouldn't connect with that message, don't send it. Don't put it out in the universe. There's no value there. And state your intention. How many people have been talking to someone where you ended up talking about their kid's podiatrist appointment next week? You have no idea how you got there. Start that conversation by saying, I'm here to talk to you about our new ticket programs for 2018 with an opportunity to save you money when you come out to games. Tell people that up front. Don't beat around the bush. Don't try to trick them into something. Be upfront, be direct, have that conversation with them. And you need to make sure 90% of sports sales still end up happening over the phone. So whether you're connecting with someone on LinkedIn, you're tweeting at someone, you're writing an email to someone, you're texting to someone, that we are still trying to connect and create face-to-face or direct communication with someone. That should be the goal regardless of what channel that we're using. And you need to have a plan of attack. Everybody sells differently. Everyone in this room sells differently. And there's a way to maximize what you're doing by taking a look at your 3 best months as a salesperson and figuring out, where did those sales come from? Did I drive those leads off Twitter, LinkedIn? Did I drive those leads off of self-prospecting and spend time there? You sell differently than everyone else. Take a look at the best 3 months, see where those leads came from, and then do that. That's the best version of yourself when it comes to sales. And make sure that whatever we're doing, we're making that attempt to get face-to-face and to be able to interact with people. And then finally, more traditional sales training needs to change to more situational sales training. Whenever you role play, and that's what a lot of teams do, we'll role play. We did our role plays this week. It was great, right? Role playing is fine. It's like eating your vegetables. But the most important part is to make sure that in those situations that are critical to sales, that we're practicing those situations specifically. Do you have an agenda statement in a sales conversation? Can you fall out of bed saying your opening and your agenda statement? You need to be able to. You need to fall out of bed being able to do that. Practice that one by itself. Next, when it comes to questioning, are you just doing the dumb 4 seconds of questioning we did right there? What's your name again? Sorry? Alana. Alana, who'd you go to the game with? What was important about going with your friends? Sure, how often are you guys able to do that?
Not very often.
Nice. So what was important about taking them to a baseball game? Right, like getting more information, having a real conversation with them, attempting to learn from them. You have to train to get deeper, otherwise we're going to ask the same 4 questions to every single person we talk to and say, nobody wanted to talk to us today, everybody sucked, nobody wanted to have that conversation. We need to create urgency every single day that we're in the office. I'm running on urgency because I got 1 minute left in this conversation. We need to make sure that when we walk into the office every day that our pants are on fire. That today is the day to close, no matter if it's the middle of the off season or the regular season. Urgency is in their mind, but we have to train to be able to do it. It's a critical part of our training every day that we learn how to create urgency every day. And then the number one thing that I get submitted to my site, I need to learn how to handle objections better. The best way to learn how to handle objections is to practice, because objections are different in every single market. Every sport, every market, every team has different answers to the objections. And so you need to take a step back and not do objection handling as a whole, but focus on what you're hearing and what the other people around you are hearing every day and be able to attack those things. And there's a ton of other things that you can teach when it comes to sales training. So real quick, last story and then I'm off. This guy named John Sweeney, he ran the Brave New Workshop. And so one of the stories that he used to tell was his wife bought him a suit for Christmas one year. Awesome suit. Now, he's exactly like Chris Farley. So if you're looking for a comparison to him, you saw it at the NBA draft, right? Like all the comparisons. His comparison would be Chris Farley. So lady tailors the suit. She puts everything, she puts it on. He goes, hey, would you like to see what I do for a job? Suit maker's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Does a cartwheel, big guy, does a cartwheel, starts swimming his hands around like this, tears the suit down both pant legs and underneath both arms. Takes the ripped suit off, hands it back to her and says, build a suit for what I do. Right? When we think about training in 2018, we can't use the same sales training book that we used 20 years ago. We need to adapt to what's happening in the marketplace, who our customers are, and what we're thinking about. And so internally, as a person or whatever, you need to make sure that you're making that adaptation along the way. That's my contact information. That's my website. Follow me. Link me in. It's free, guys. The website's all content driven by you, and it's free. I don't make a dime off anything you guys do. So please connect with me. Check out the website. There's cool podcasts and everything else. Appreciate the time.